HKDSE results out today. Traces of antibiotics found in honey samples. And more protests against acquittal in Zimmerman case.
Hello and a very good evening. Results of this year's Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education, or HKDSE, examination were out this morning, and more than 28,000 students have obtained the minimum grades that meet local university entry requirements. And 9 candidates have achieved the top grade of 5 double star in 7 subjects. Vicky Kung has our top story tonight.
Their faces say it all. Some look forward to their university years. For others, the future is less certain. This lad has achieved level 2 in Chinese language, short of level 3 needed for university admission. Studying abroad, he says, may be an option. At LaSalle College, months of hard work paid off for these boys. Christopher Sum is one of 9 students who've scored to the top grade of 5 star in 7 subjects. He wants to be a doctor.
For me, it's medicine. I think the most important thing is to find a purpose in what you do and enjoy your profession.
And for the first time, this school in Tin Shui Wai has one of the top grade students. Tse Choi Ho says his school may not have the best resources, so it all boiled down to hard work. This year, 28,000 students obtained results which reach university entry requirements. But reaching the benchmark does not guarantee offers. Interviews and extracurricular activities are also contributing factors. Students who've made the grades for university can change their preferences on the website of the Joint University Programs Admission System between tomorrow and Thursday. University admission results will be released on the website on August 9th. Students who are not satisfied with their HKDSE results have 5 days to appeal. The results will be finalized on August 13th. Vicky Kung, TVB News.
23 students at one private school were disqualified from their HKDSE Chinese exam for plagiarism. The school says the teacher involved had not followed Education Bureau guidelines in handling the matter. The government, meanwhile, says it has a good regulatory system to monitor the work of private schools. Jenny Lam reports.
The 23 students from Modern College disqualified from the HKDSE Chinese exam were found to have copied materials off the internet in doing their project under the school-based assessment system. The school said today that a teacher did not ask the students to fill in a form to state that they had made use of materials found online. The teacher has since been suspended. The school claims it is hard to detect plagiarism without the right computer software.
According to my knowledge, I think we may not have enough resources to do that. As assessed by my principal, we hope the government, if possible, can assist us in doing so. And I believe it's not only our own problem. Maybe it is the problem for the whole secondary school.
School-based assessments were introduced under the new higher secondary school curriculum in order to encourage learning and enable students to know their strengths and weaknesses. But liberal studies teacher Chung Yoi-Fai says sometimes teachers are faced with a group of students with varying abilities, and teachers may ask the students to limit themselves to topics the teachers are familiar with to make assessments easier. Education Convergence Chairman Ho Han-Kun fears schools are bending the rules in order to keep their reputation. When students can't handle the workload, schools may use dishonest ways, such as getting someone else to do their work, just so the students can keep up the grades. Secretary for Education Eddie Ng was asked today whether plagiarism at Modern College points to inadequacies in school-based assessments, especially when it comes to monitoring private schools. He insists the same rules apply to all schools and the Education Bureau has a good regulatory system. He believes what happened at Modern College was just a one-off incident. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
On to other local news now. The Consumer Council has found traces of antibiotics in 6 samples of honey. The consumer watchdog has also discovered that some expensive Manuka honey products actually contain added sugar. Rachel Leung reports.
The Consumer Council recently tested 55 samples of honey and found traces of antibiotics in 6 products imported from the mainland or Taiwan. The council explained that some farmers feed antibiotics to the bees to prevent them from falling ill. But long-term consumption of honey contaminated with antibiotics can lead to the problems of drug-resistant bacteria. And treating infections by such bacteria will be challenging. So the advice is avoid eating too much honey that contains antibiotics. The consumer watchdog also found the purity of 14 honey samples falls short of what's claimed by the manufacturers. They include samples of Manuka honey, the most expensive of which costs more than $500 a jar. Yet more than half of them contain added sugar.
Honey are those sugars which are found in the flowers and the bee to collect it and then later attract it. So it should not contain any other form of sugars. So what we are finding here is we found certain percentage of the sugar which are not honey itself.
The Consumer Council has handed the test results to the Customs and Excise Department to see if the manufacturers violated product labeling regulations. Rachel Leung, TVB News.
The reporter who helped Edward Snowden reveal the extent of America's spying activity says the fugitive has even more material which could expose how U.S. intelligence gathering works. Glenn Greenwald claims the extra information Snowden has could seriously undermine his former employer, the National Security Agency.
He's in possession of literally thousands of documents that contain very specific blueprints that would allow somebody who read them to know exactly how the NSA does what it does, which would in turn allow them either to evade that surveillance or to replicate it. And that's what I was talking about, that he has basically the instruction manual for how the NSA is built.
Washington's second most senior diplomat will be in Egypt for talks with the country's interim leadership. William Burns will urge for a peaceful transition to a democratically elected civilian government. His visit comes as supporters and opponents of ousted President Mohamed Morsi plan more rallies later today. They gathered in their tens of thousands last night in support of ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi. Ever since his ouster in a military coup earlier this month, the Muslim Brotherhood has vowed to keep up its campaign of protest until Morsi is reinstated as president. More rallies are planned today, with the Brotherhood calling for 1 million people to take to the streets, while a counter-protest is being planned by Morsi's opponents. With the situation unstable and delicate, the United States has sent its Deputy Secretary of State, William Burns, to Egypt to hold talks with the country's military-backed leaders. Washington says Burns will urge an end to all violence and a transition to an inclusive, democratically elected civilian government. But there is suspicion at Washington's motives, with supporters and opponents of Morsi wondering whether America is merely interfering in Egypt's affairs for its own strategic gain. Still, Egyptians are hoping for some kind of stability after weeks of chaotic protests which have seen dozens killed. And swearing in a cabinet for the new interim government could at least be a sign the leadership is trying to stabilize things. Among those filling vacant posts is the pro-reform leader and former head of the UN nuclear watchdog Mohammed El-Baradei, who's become vice president for foreign relations. But the administration has been weakened by the refusal of the Brotherhood and Egypt's other main Islamic party, Salafi al-Nour, to work with the interim leadership. Indeed, authorities have already launched a criminal investigation into Morsi and senior members of the Brotherhood. Egypt's public prosecutor ordered the assets of 14 Islamist leaders frozen as the investigation is carried out. Former South African President Nelson Mandela may be released from hospital soon. Another former leader of the country, Thabo Mbeki, says Mandela seems to have made enough of a recovery from a lung infection to be discharged from hospital and go home. He will continue with his treatment at home if all goes well. And his grandson hopes he'll be back in time for his birthday on July 18th. Mandela's health has been the subject of national concern and global scrutiny over the past few weeks, with many worried that the anti-apartheid leader was on the verge of death. Scores of people have been gathering outside his hospital daily, praying for Mandela to get better. Well, China's GDP growth slowed to 7.5% in the second quarter compared with the same period last year. The figure is also down from the 7.7% growth registered in the January to March period this year. The data was in line with analyst expectations, many of whom predicted a slowdown because of weak overseas demand for Chinese exports. Action by central authorities to rein in bank lending also contributed to the slowdown, as Beijing seems prepared to accept that years of blistering growth may not be on the cards going forward. The central government has set a target of 7.5% for the whole of 2013, which would be the lowest rate of expansion in more than 20 years.
And still ahead in our newscast, Lan in Fanling Golf Course on land sale list. Details of housing development in Hung Shui Kui, and Bastille Day celebrations in France.
And we're back tonight with more local news. Part of the exclusive golf club in Fanling will be included in this year's list of government land for sale. But Secretary for Development Paul Chan explained today that using the entire golf course for construction may be more complicated. Jenny Lam reports.
This exclusive golf club in Fanling and the Chief Executive's villa in the district are undergoing environmental impact assessment to see if the land should be included in the Northeastern New Territories Development Project. Secretary for Development Paul Chan told legislators this morning that the process will take about 3 years. Questions were raised last August that the golf club should be used for development. Since then, the club has been told that a 1.5-hectare plot, previously under a short-term tenancy lease, has to be returned to the government and be included in this year's government land list. Collaboration between the public and private sectors in the Northeastern New Territories Development Plan has raised questions whether the government is in cahoots with private developers. Paul Chan said of the 333 hectares of land slated for development, about 48% is privately owned, but most of it can be repossessed by the government, and there is no question of the government favouring businesses. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
And the government has launched the second round of public consultation for a plan to develop the Northwest New Territories. Larger than the controversial Northeast New Territories project, this one is set to provide more public housing. Etienne Lammy-Smith has that story.
Between Tuen Mun and Tin Shui Wai, Hong Shui Kiu is the target for this latest project. Originally covering some 790 hectares, the development will now span 826, which will increase the number of residential units to 60,000. With a ratio of 51% public and 49% private housing, the project is expected to provide over 30,000 public units. 4 areas will be dedicated to public housing and another 4 to home ownership scheme flats. To the north and south, private residential units. The government plans to add a Hong Shui Kiu station to the West Rail Line. This would form the new town centre, complete with hotels, residential areas and offices. This area, with about 40 buildings, would have 8 times the building density of the rest of the region. To the north, there would be an industrial zone. Of the 446 hectares of land that can be developed, over 75% is privately owned. In the Northeast New Territories project, much of the land is owned by agricultural developers, which makes land resumption easier. Here in the Northwest, a lot of the land is owned by Indigenous people, so the government says it would be more difficult for private developers to undertake such a project. The consultation period will last 3 months, and work is expected to begin by 2019. According to the current timetable, the first batch of residents would start moving in by 2024, and 10 years later, there should be space there for a total of 218,000 new residents. Etienne Lammy-Smith, TVB News.
Thousands of demonstrators demanding justice have marched in major cities across the United States to protest against the acquittal of George Zimmerman, who shot and killed an unarmed black teenager. But U.S. President Barack Obama is calling for calm. A jury of 6 women may have absolved George Zimmerman, believing he shot 17-year-old Trayvon Martin in self-defense. But civil rights leader Al Sharpton characterized the acquittal as a scary revelation to Americans. He, like so many other Americans, believed that because Martin was black, Zimmerman pursued him like a criminal.
The day I went down, I think every American ought to be afraid that my child can do nothing wrong and can be killed, and you can use self-defense and tell 4 or 5 different stories that end up being inconsistent and still walk away.
In addition to protesting in Los Angeles, Boston, and several other cities, angry activists crammed into New York's Times Square. They say if the tables were turned and the black teen shot Zimmerman, self-defense or not, guilty would have been the verdict.
And so to deal with that and to know that you're guilty automatically for just the color of your skin, which you can't change if you wanted to.
Race aside, this protester said the black teen's death is a tragedy. He had no criminal record, was minding his own business walking home from a store after buying candy and a soft drink.
It's just a completely gross miscarriage of justice, and I feel everybody, white, black, from all backgrounds, really should be concerned and horrified by this situation.
The disgusted masses also took to the streets of Washington, D.C.
Young black men are constantly being the victims of violence, and that we do not have a justice system that recognizes that this is a crisis.
Also in the nation's capital, President Obama called for calm, reassuring supporters he still stands against discrimination and gun violence. But Republicans say Obama is partly to blame for inflaming tensions. After the shooting, Obama told Americans, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. Relatives of Trayvon Martin say America's failed justice system is not the only judge Zimmerman will face. Sonia Artero, TVB News. France held its annual Bastille Day parade yesterday with a traditional march down the Champs-Élysées in Paris under the gaze of French President François Hollande. Guests of honor this year were United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and the presidents from Mali and Croatia. Troops from the armies of Mali and Croatia paraded down central Paris, along with thousands of personnel from France's Army, Navy, and Air Force. In all, 4,800 troops marched in front of the presidential stage. An aerobatic display team flew overhead, trailing smoke in the colors of the French flag, red, white, and blue. The event ended with a dramatic display of paratroopers landing. Had to get those paratroopers in there because that was dramatic.
That was dramatic.
What dramatics do you have for us in sports today?
Well, we do have a lot of drama actually in England, and it starts with cricket, with the fans that are on a high after drawing first blood against Australia in the first cricket test. I think it was a close run thing, but they got there in the end. And there's no changes for England ahead of the second Ashes test against Australia at Lord's, which starts later this week. And that's despite Australia with a near historic comeback on the final day of the opening test before losing eventually to England by 14 runs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just delighted with the way things went. We knew it was going to be difficult this morning. Their tail is very strong, so we knew we had to bowl well. And yeah, I mean, I found some rhythm this morning, which the captain cottoned onto and kept me going for 13 overs. So, you know, I'm just delighted that we could actually, you know, it did get tight, and as Cookie said, we stayed calm, even when they were getting closer and closer. So that was the key for us to winning the game, I think.
How close we got, I'm disappointed that we couldn't get over the line. And I said last night that I still thought we could win the test match. So, you know, we as a team are disappointed we haven't won this first test. But I hope we've shown, I hope we've earned a bit of respect by the way we've played. You know, that's what's important.
Well, it was a stunning day for track and field. It was revealed yesterday that 3 world-class sprinters, including American Tyson Gay, have failed drug tests. Jameson Wong reports.
The fastest man in the world this year said he doesn't have a sabotage story, but that he basically put his trust in someone and was let down. Gay did not reveal the substance that led to the failed drug test. The 30-year-old has voluntarily withdrawn from next month's World Championships. Meanwhile, the agent for former world record holder in the 100 meters, Asafa Powell, said the Jamaican tested positive for a banned stimulant. Compatriot Sharon Simpson also tested positive for a banned substance. To golf, an American Phil Mickelson won for the first time in Europe in 20 years. Mickelson beat Brandon Grace in a playoff to capture the Scottish Open. The British Open is next week at Muirfield. And two terrific goals from the Gold Cup match between Mexico and Martinique in Denver, Colorado. Mexico's Marco Fabian off the rebound for his third goal of the tournament, while Luis Montes struck from long range. 3-1 the final score. The Mexicans advance to the knockout stages, joining Panama from Group A. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
And Formula One champion Sebastian Vettel traded in his high-tech wheels for a simpler form of racing. Vettel channeled Super Mario as he showed off his skills at a soapbox derby in Germany. The 26-year-old leads the F1 Drivers' Championship by 34 points and is coming off a win in his home race. The series stops in Budapest in 2 weeks for the Hungarian Grand Prix.
And finally, the Duchess of Cambridge may be due to give birth soon, but Prince William proved he wasn't one to just sit and wait for the news. He was out playing a game of polo with his brother, Prince Harry. British newspapers have speculated that the due date for the Duchess is this Saturday, but the prince appeared relaxed as he kept a long-standing tradition of playing in a charity polo match. The royal couple have remained vague about the exact date, but the arrival will be announced in a combination of the traditional and modern via Twitter, websites, and with a notice outside Buckingham Palace. The baby will be known by its given name and will have the title His or Her Royal Highness, the Prince or Princess of Cambridge. And that's a royal wrap of our news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.
Good evening. Locally, there were showers of squally thunderstorms. And as tonight's situation chart shows, an active maritime airstream is bringing showers to the coastal areas of Guangdong. Today's temperatures ranged from 24.8 to 28.1 degrees, and the relative humidity was between 84 to 98%. Moderate southeasterly winds. The current temperature is now 25 degrees Celsius, with the relative humidity standing at 97%. 44.9 millimeters of rainfall has been recorded since midnight. So Freddie, how's the weather tomorrow? As for tonight and tomorrow, it will be mainly cloudy. There will be scattered showers and a few thunderstorms. Temperatures will range between 25 and 30 degrees. There will be showers in the next couple of days. Tomorrow's API is forecast at 10 to 65, and the pollution level will range from low to high. And the maximum UV intensity forecast for tomorrow will be about 5. And here's the latest global weather update. Cloudy in Shanghai, showers in Taipei, rain in Xiamen. Rain in Guangzhou and Chengdu, thunderstorms in Macau. Sunny in Beijing, rain in Seoul, bright in Tokyo. Thunderstorms in Bangkok, rain in Ho Chi Minh City and Manila. Showers in Kuala Lumpur, thunderstorms in Singapore, showers in Jakarta. Thunderstorms in New Delhi, rain in Karachi and Mumbai. Sunny in Cairo. Showers in Brisbane and Sydney, bright in Melbourne, sunny in Auckland. Sunny in Toronto. Sunny in Vancouver, bright in San Francisco, sunny in Los Angeles. Bright in London, sunny in Paris, Amsterdam and Zurich. And that's the weather. Have a lovely evening.